Hello and welcome to our webinar. We'll be starting in 1 minute. Hello, welcome to the Vigilant webinar on migrating Microsoft SharePoint to cloud. My name is Jim Gormley. I'll be your host today. We really appreciate you joining us for this informative session. I trust that most of you already have SharePoint in your organization, so you know what a powerful and important tool it can be to provide collaboration and information to your employees as well as to your associates and customers. Talk today about this tool and how you can make it more efficient and more effective. You might also be able to take advantage of migrating to a newer version into the cloud to enhance performance and functionality of SharePoint. And I'll give you an opportunity to clean up and reorganize your SharePoint environment. It's a powerful tool. We have a lot of experience helping clients move to the cloud, and this provides significant benefits to your organization. Again, Jim Gormley, I'm the VP of Sales with Vigilant Technologies. And with us today is Sean Selway, our team lead and Microsoft SharePoint architect. I'm going to just take a couple of minutes to introduce you to Vigilant Technologies, our company, and our capabilities. And so the program will be Sean discussing the SharePoint topic. Note that if you have any questions during the event, there is a chat window on the lower right, and we invite you to enter your questions there. And in 50 minutes, we'll do a wrap-up, answer questions, and any follow-up activities as appropriate. So let me just give you a quick thumbnail sketch of our company, Vigilant Technologies. We were founded in 1999. Initially, our focus was on Oracle technologies. We have extensive experience with Oracle Database, Oracle Apps, and even Oracle Cloud. But along the way, many of our clients indicate an interest and a need for Microsoft services as well. So our Microsoft practice began with an extensive support practice for Microsoft SharePoint database support. Also now encompasses SharePoint as well. So we clients to optimize their SharePoint environment, to spin up SharePoint for the first time, to migrate it to cloud, which has been a very popular opportunity area for us of late. As an organization is that we really like to focus on our customers. We like to build a very close working relationship with them and provide innovation, trust, and teamwork as a foundation of our relationship. We have 100% satisfaction guarantee for all of our services. We want our clients to be completely satisfied and even delighted, and we stand behind that. Also a minority certified partner both in the U.S. and Canada. Again, I remind you that if you have any questions along the way today, please use the chat window, and we'll be to address those either as a group at the end, or if you want a private answer, just let me know. Global capabilities as an organization are that we've been involved with 50 large-scale projects to deploy apps including Oracle EBS and SharePoint, as well as BI solutions including Oracle BI and Microsoft Power BI. We've also had extensive experience lifting and shifting workloads to the cloud and or to SaaS-based cloud solutions for Microsoft and Oracle. We have over 200 C-level consultants worldwide that work closely with our client base to help them with projects and ongoing managed support. We're in our 18th year of business with 200 clients served along the way in just about every industry and referenceable. As you can see by the map, we're located in Troy, Michigan in the U.S. We have offices in Toronto. We have a major tech center in Hyderabad, India, as well as an office in Dubai. We'd like to turn over the presentation to Sean. He'll introduce himself in greater detail, talk a little bit about migration. Sean?
Thanks, Jim. Let me pull up the presentation here. All right, so everyone can see my screen. Again, my name is Sean, and I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today. My role at Vigilant Technologies is the SharePoint Architect Lead. I've been working for, I guess, about 22 years, with about a good 10 years dedicated directly to SharePoint, the last basically 10 years of my career. I worked in all aspects of SharePoint, from development, administration, architecture, whether it's, building web parts or apps, to building up PowerShell scripts to kind of automate some of the back end of SharePoint, to building full SharePoint forms and doing migrations and various systems integration. A variety of companies and the U.S. government. Companies as small as a dozen folks, up to Fortune 100 companies with 25,000 SharePoint users. I've seen bad and definitely the ugly when it comes to the various SharePoint farms' health and viability. And I can hope, or only hope, that your farm falls to the latter, or I say actually into the former. Because that if it does fall into the latter, if it is part of the bad or the ugly, we can help. Whether it's running slowly, or perhaps you're looking for an increase of productivity or return investment, there's no better time to fix these kind of problems if you're considering a migration. Whether that's a cloud or to upgrade to on-premise, the version 2016, 2019 being on the horizon. But it was migration is not only of sites and assets, but it's fixing them too. Most of the implementations I've seen in, it's some of the companies that I've seen have always a little kludgy. They were set up as just kind of a test bed, and they very shortly or very quickly got game, production capable. So the best intent was not necessarily fine with best practices. So that's why you're here today, potentially, is to consider a migration to on-premise 2016 or Azure or the cloud with Office 365. So the key takeaways today, as you can see, are going to be, I'm going to talk a little bit about the migration process, benefits gained from migration, what you guys can do for preparation for any kind of migration, the business impact, and then choose the right migration method, because there's a few of them. SharePoint, I think we all kind of have an idea. It's a web-based collaborative platform that we've all grown to love over the last 10 years. And I say 10 years because I know of many firms that used anything earlier than MOS 2007. And I'm generally impressed when I hear that they have. So I say the last 10 years. It's uses a document management storage system and an app development platform. Instead of building, one-off .NET apps and having to deal with the security wrappers, et cetera, that come with it, you build a SharePoint, and a lot of that is managed for you. And Microsoft has said, there's roughly 190 million users, and I'm sure there's even more than that, which makes it, I think, by far the most widely used system of its kind. So, understanding the migration process. It basically falls down to plan, migrate, and manage, PMM. The planning phase is, as it says, it consists of the activities before the migration. So I generally place this as building an inventory of the current environment. Web site collections, subsites underneath the site collections, and of course subsites under the subsites, as far as it goes. But diving a little deeper, we need to uncover all the custom coded web parts, solutions, content editor web parts, where users can insert J or JavaScript to kind of manipulate the look and feel or the actions of SharePoint. Then, of course, there's workflows and 30 solutions that all need to be documented, as well as external lists and content types, as they rely on data from outside sources. So moving to the cloud, those sources may not be available. Also looking for one that kind of popped its head up recently, in the last year or so, on a particular migration I was doing, was something I never thought to look for, which was nested lookup columns. It's exceedingly important because anything I find beyond 4 levels deep of a nested lookup column can reduce performance greatly, both not only on the in SharePoint, but within the migration and that migration tool. In stages, I always advocate the opportunity to reorganize and restructure your content. Again, why bring over the trash and the failed attempts from the old system? Plan for what features you need and those that you don't. Why have publishing enabled if you don't use it? Why support for access databases if you don't need it? Those are just things. And then obviously you need to plan for which method you want to whether manual or third-party tool, but we'll go over that a little bit later. So now to the migration step. This one, is the smallest of the steps, but it's also the most intensive. Do you move all at once, or is it in a staggered approach? I've seen and been witness to both. All at once may appear to save time, where you just basically push everything over at once and then do the QA in the back end. But that process, the QA process, usually extends exponentially. I actually find that a staggered approach allows for higher accuracy. It allows you to kind of, what I usually find that works well is moving 2 or 3 site collections at a time, and then do the QA. Work with the end users or the site collection owners, and once that's signed off on, you move to the next 3. That seems to work the best, in my opinion. So only out of the PMM stages, we get to manage. So after the migration's complete and you have Q&A, and everything seems to be working as it should, well, keep in what's happening. Obviously, check the SharePoint logs if it's on-prem, Event Viewer, or if it's on-prem, SharePoint Health Analyzer. See if there's anything, amiss. And the users are complying with the governance policies you put in place. And if you're like many companies that I've worked with, you potentially don't have a governance policy. And so an idea would be to draft one. Lay out what the rules are. What can be done by and what can be done whom. As far as once the migration's done and you're sitting on your new platform, things changed a little bit. Um, Perhaps provide training to some of your end users. Send them to power user training classes if they're site collection admins. Provide training materials or links. There's quite a lot out there. Just providing them and pointing them in the right direction is always a good bet. All right. Let's say you're interested in moving to Office 365, otherwise known as SharePoint Online, or a part of it anyway. What are some of the benefits? Well, SharePoint Online is a SaaS service, software as a service. It's basically managed for you. The benefit is no real downtime or headaches due to patching and upgrade efforts. I don't know about you, but if there's any admins on the call, but I note nothing worse than going into a patching process or event during a weekend and it just simply not working. Well, all that kind of taken care of for you with SharePoint Online. It's actually one of the greatest benefits. And but also, you don't have to ever worry about migrations again unless switches up things. Reduced operational cost while increasing IT effectiveness. This is a big one, and you repurpose employees to higher value tasks other than managing SharePoint log file sizes or whether or not FimSync is working properly. All that can be managed for you, and you can move these people to other areas that would provide more. I'd say. And then about SharePoint Online is it's flexible for small and large companies. It used to in the past where only large companies could really deploy SharePoint Enterprise and kind of really leverage it properly, and it's very cost prohibitive for small companies. So it doesn't matter whether you have 12 people in your company or 12,000. SharePoint Online can handle all of that. And it certainly helps reduce to operate globally. If you're in Hyderabad and you're trying to access, an on-prem SharePoint located in Reston, Virginia, for example, there's going to be a lot of latency and delay. Could be. So with SharePoint Online, you actually get to use their architecture, which is globally. Least amounts possible is what they usually say. There's a recovery. I have some DR plans for on-premise SharePoint that almost literally double the cost. It can be done at a fraction of the cost with SharePoint Online. There's numerous third-party solutions and apps. It means you don't need to necessarily reinvent the wheel if somebody else has already built that wheel for you. No need to play a VPN or an extranet to share data outside of your organization or out of SharePoint for that matter, because with basically 2 clicks, you can hit anyone with a free Microsoft Live account. And they're able to view the content that you shared with them, and you can also set time, the amount that content is available, so you don't have to accidentally forget, oh my gosh, I let so-and-so have access to the site, and it's 6 later, and so you can put time limits on it. You can be anywhere and hit SharePoint Online, whether you're sitting in India, Germany, or a local shop. One of the clients we moved or migrated, I should say, recently was a tubing and manufacturing company. Everything to the cloud to better support their global sales staff. So none of these people having to log into a VPN and having all these extra apps on their phone or on their tablet they could get in without any issues. It was roughly 250 gig of data, about 500 users, and don't quote me on this, but I think they ended up cutting costs by upwards of 30 to 40%, since they no longer had to worry about hardware costs anymore. So that's really something to consider. Upgrade to SharePoint 2016 on-premise, platform as a service. So, to my opinion, benefits is there's a highly transparent environment. If you have on-premise currently, then you understand exactly what I mean. You have 100% control of both the software, the hardware, everything. They're great benefit of premise is that you can protect your previous investments in SharePoint customizations. You built a custom theme, or app that delivers exactly what you need. Well, 9 out of 10, and perhaps with a little bit of finesse, most of those customizations can be brought with you to the next version of SharePoint, provided it's on-prem. Online, you're dealing with a shared environment there, and so the lot of code is going to have to be sandboxed, and so you don't get the level of cushion that you might be used to. And for some developers, that can be discouraging. Another benefit of 2016, easier scaling. As far as you can control all of the bits and bobs, as they say. Increase the max file size, the threshold, which some pretty cool things you later on about 2016, because max list thresholds are a thing of the past. But we'll get back to that. Ability. If you're going online, SharePoint Online, for example, one thing to consider is how fast is your ISP. If you're used to downloading as fast as your intranet can, then if you're moving large files in and out of SharePoint Online, it's going to be a little bit slower for you. But dealing with small files, Excel files or Word documents, etc., PowerPoints, what have you, then there's no issue there. But if you're dealing with CAD files, or if you're uploading those to the cloud, then there are limitations there as fast as your internet can push. Let's see. Well, as I said, on-premise is highly customizable. You pull in, exposed data from line of business or legacy systems, SQL Server reporting systems, Salesforce, etc. Isn't necessarily the case with online. You don't have those connections. The SSRS is gone. So that's something to consider. And on previous versions, believe it or not, SharePoint 2016 is actually easier to patch. It used to be that patching was put off until absolutely necessary due to the fear that something might break. I know I've been there. 2016 and above, it allows for basically slip line patching. You basically can patch without any server downtime. I think a phenomenal thing. But you got to keep in mind, every iteration has gotten better and better, and so you would expect 2016 to be better than 2013 and 2010, etc. So in 2016, you can have hybrid environments. So if you happen to say, for example, have sensitive data that must stay on premise, you can do that. Because obviously with the cloud, there might be some it might be compromised at some point, or potential. It's potential. You never know with auditing in with compliance, what cannot be readily available on, just on in the cloud. So that's something to think about. And finally, of course, you get increased performance. Going to 2016, it runs faster, runs more reliable. Just speaking, every version of SharePoint has gotten better. I've witnessed it. MOS 2007, looking back, was kind of a nightmare kludgy thing that was almost kind of just say, Mike was treating us as the beta users before it gave 2010. I know from a development standpoint, at least, it was not great until 2010 came around. So, features that I think are really cool with 2016 are automatic index creation for large lists. So there's no more 5,000 item list view tools. And according to Microsoft, there is no upper limit to how many items you can have on a list. Because what ends up happening is when you go beyond the 5,000, it automatically indexes it for you. Another profile service no longer uses FemSync, and so the firms on the line, it uses now strict import, so it really always works. I won't say always works, but it always works because obviously we're dealing with Microsoft here. So, but it's from what I tell and from my administration of it, it is a far better than how use service would sync various accounts, or there's always some sort of issue with, hey, my account's not up to date, even though Active Directory is up to date, and so you have to go through and try to figure things out. Speaking, it's not a whole lot different. The look and feel is different than 2013. So if you happen to be sitting on 2013, going to 2016 is just going to give you a whole new level of reliability and speed without kind of inconveniencing your end users. One of Fortune 500 company, insurance company, needed help migrating from 2010 to 2016. Well, they're going with kind of smaller, cheaper shop, and I wasn't privy to that, but prior to arrival, their previous attempt to move to 2013 failed, and they ended up having to revert back to 2010. We ended up working with them directly on site to reorganize roughly 2,000 site collections down to 25 site collections, and a total migration of about terabytes of data, and I think they had roughly 2,000 to 2,200 users, give or take. So, I definitely am a big fan of on-prem, especially more so if you are a heavily customized environment. If you are, if you've got a development staff on hand, if you are really leveraging a lot of third-party solutions, on-premise and/or Azure on-prem are two areas that you would probably want to stay with. If you're not really branded and you don't kind of have a lot of those customizations, and you don't have necessarily the the compliance issues with trying to put data to the cloud, then I would say SharePoint Online is definitely something to consider. 2016 hosted on Azure. I know there's been talk about it, but it seems like the big one right now is everyone's moving to the cloud. Well, you consider Azure as the cloud. It's basically you're moving your hardware to the cloud. So, maybe you like the idea of on-premise SharePoint, but you don't want to host infrastructure. You're tired of dealing with the with RAM or hard drives or what have you. Um, in the cloud, it has nearly all the benefits of on-premise with the scalability of the cloud. So, you can eliminate the initial hardware and maintenance costs. There's to, let's say, third-party solutions or custom code. You can basically do what you like with your software. Your custom code solutions. So it goes back to protecting your investment in SharePoint. You have same OS access as if you were remote desktoping into the server. It looks no different. You can deploy new servers in minutes versus hours or days. I know of shops, use VMware with their SharePoint and with a lot of their servers. But still underlying hardware there that you have to manage, right? So if a hard drive goes down, there's a delay to get it back up and running, and limited. So if you needed something, let's say 6 gig of RAM and 3 cores and 5 terabyte drives, that's not a problem. I mean, as long as you basically you pay for what you use. So even if you need, some gigs of RAM, what you need, you can get and you pay for it as you need it. It's all spun up literally through a GUI, a web interface GUI. So another benefit to 2016 in Azure is reduced licensing and compliance issues. How about you? And I'm pretty sure nobody likes to get audited, whether it's the IRS or Microsoft. I mean, so having, Microsoft poking around your systems and trying to find where they can nickel and dime you, per se, is no fun. With Azure, you basically, are able to reduce the audits or fines because the pricing within Azure includes the required software. And by software, I mean like the OS level or SQL Server. With SharePoint, obviously, then there's Cal license pricing and all that, which is kind of a separate thing. But you can still get all of that software through Azure, and that basically limits your liability. One example I have of a client that we moved to Azure with SharePoint was a app development company. About 100 developers, I'd say, probably more by now, located globally, and they wanted to move their on-premise SharePoint to Azure. They could leverage the scalability and ease of access that the cloud provides. Took the pressure off the internal system admins team, from monitor, the various environments, dev environments, and it ended up saving them, I would say, hundreds, if not thousands of man hours in just various troubleshooting. And obviously those hours equal, some dollar-related amount that they're saving in hardware costs as well. So that's something I think is exciting. I'm a big fan of Azure, just from the amount of but of what you can do and how fast you can do it. You could have a server up in 5 minutes and exactly to your spec. So that's all controlled by you. So you control. So next week, how do you prepare for migration? Or in the beginning, you build an inventory of your custom solutions, page layouts, master pages, sections, subsites, web parts, apps, anything that basically was altered from out of the box, and by that basically means whatever you've added to SharePoint after you deployed initially. The 80 rule that I find very interesting because 80% of the employees only use 20% of the content that you provide them, and it's up to you or to us to figure out who or what those documents are, what those areas are of the portal. Good time to identify, the large areas of the site collections that are huge. Perhaps you did away with best practices and you put file sizes in there of than your sizes. So that's very important. And then tagging, assign. I've heard of this term on the internet, and I really liked it. So, when your inventory, assign a tag of remove, migrate, or rebuild. And I think they're kind of self-explanatory. Remediated data, things that need to be culled out. You take the whole kitchen sink with you when you move. And migrate, obviously, that's to be tagged for sites, documents, etc., that are approved for moving. And rebuild. If you have any custom solutions, perchance, go through and figure out whether or not it can be rebuilt for a cost-effective amount of whether it's cost-effective to rebuild them or to reintegrate them. And mechanic the cloud. I spoke to this before, but legal and audit what are the legal and audit implications for your company? Consider perhaps the security of sensitive data. Not every should data be pushed to the cloud. On that, look for before you pull the trigger. Checking workflows. Generally speaking, those do not migrate very well. Those are ones that are in process. So we always to communicate with the various site collection owners to say, hey, workflow after this time need to not occur, and so you either lock access to the areas of workflows, because in the end, we'll have to end up running a PowerShell to basically find and terminate them. So consider architecture upgrade. And you're getting you get a lot of features there. They require more horsepower, so to speak. As of 2013, search services can be split. You can have 3 or 4 servers just dedicated to search, and then you can have your cache on another server, and then an app server, and then your 2 web front ends. So we'd work with you to figure out what you would need as far as your topology. But it's always good to for the folks out there that are running SharePoint on a standalone machine. I've actually gone into a few very large companies, and this is a while ago, and running SharePoint, I believe it was 2010, off of a deprecated laptop. A user, an employee left, and they decided to re-provision his laptop, or somebody did maybe, and put SharePoint on there. And next thing you know, guess what? Everybody was really reliant on SharePoint for their culture. So yeah, architecture's big. Communication's also big. No worse than end user coming in to work on a Monday and finding that change to their work routine. So communication is key. Work with the end users, give them training, provide how-to wikis, explain new features or what's changed. And finally, consider in the preparation phase of a migration, consider a migration tool. Speaking, they give you higher accuracy migrations. Allow for better reorg of site data and the topology. Generally, it adheres to the security of the old system. Allows you, to directly upgrade from, let's say, if you're still sitting on 2007 or 2010, you don't have to do the hop to 2013 just to get to 2016. You can move directly from those legacy SharePoint platforms directly into the new one. And going back to the security, if you do, sometimes, that's what you'll end up losing with certain methods, especially with like API calls, Office 365 API calls. I learned this early on that, so notice when you check in a document or check out a document, it has your name attached to it or your user, your AD account. Sometimes that can get lost and get replaced by the system account that is actually doing that migration. So when you go in there, lo and behold, all documents and everything are owned by the system administrator. So the migration tools kind of help you with that. They help reduce broken links as well, which I think is key. There's one in particular I know that can actually work with hard-coded links as well. So those are the ones where people have put in full HTTP URL, and it can work with those to try to see where it was on the original and where it should be on the new one. Obviously, any links that are managed by SharePoint are easy to pull over. So those are some of the things to do to prepare. So planning for business impact. Good. Obviously, I've touched on this a few times to train users on the latest features because that'll just increase adoption and productivity. In the past, I remember this. It's like, how do we get more user adoption? How do we get users to actually use SharePoint? Well, they were always joking. Okay, well, you put their email in there. You move their email into SharePoint. That's kind of a joke, but it's training. People don't do something they don't know how to use, unless they're in the government or in the military, and the commander comes down and says, "Hey, you must use this." But generally speaking, it's training that gets people to use a tool. So another thing is, as far as business impact, is plan for the unexpected. It's a migration after all, and we are human after all. So a lot of times I am a big advocate of keeping the old system around, if for a month or two, and just in case anything got missed or anything was skewed or video, and that can also be done through backups as well. But if you have the migration tool and you set the old system up, maybe it's just sitting in read-only mode, or it's only limited to staff, admin staff, then you can just do a quick incremental pull of that data from that particular site or that particular list back into a new site of things. So, consider exposing data from other lines of businesses that powers all users. It gets rid of that silo effect mentality where your power is based on you kind of bring your arms around these nations, and only you got it, and if anybody else comes in and asks for it, they have to go through you. So I think it's key to expose those things. And of course, like I said, the governance policy to set company rules on what and what is not allowed. So let's see. All right, appropriate migration methods. System admins are aware of these various methods. You get your manual copy. That could be the database detach upgrade. It's easier. Truthfully, you actually do an in-place upgrade from 2013 to 2016. This is providing that your hardware and everything is up to spec. I usually don't advocate that, especially now in the days of VMware and all that, because it's good. I think that to start off fresh, operating system, fresh reinstall, and all of that, and then move only those things that you over. So you're going through that, remove, migrate, planning, etc. So the manual copy doesn't give you the ability to reorganize topology. It doesn't allow you to cut out old data. You're bringing over all that good, the bad, and the ugly. And but a lot of cost-conscious things. That's kind of the one method. Another method, if moving to obviously SharePoint Online, is their migration API. This requires, I would say, in-depth knowledge of our shell. It's a little more verbose, I would say, as well. You're dealing with kind of a Linux, that black and white environment with the cursor blinking at you, and so there's less visual confirmation. You don't necessarily see where the bits are, and bobs are going. And it's just, and it's difficult, honestly, to reorganize the topology this way. It's very not list driven. It's top down driven. So, and then there's third party tools. This is generally kind of a recommendation nowadays. Because you visually see where you're mapping objects. You can upgrade subsites to site collections, and you can actually see that, and you can see, kind of in a drop-down list kind of way, you can see all of the underlying lists and workflows and and all that underneath of it. You can actually see that data per se turn over, and then I think that makes it a little bit more reliable, I would say. And it's for incremental migration. This is a biggie. If your users are still using the old environment while you're in the process of moving to the new environment, they can still do that. They can use the old while you are moving that old to the new, and then every let's say Wednesday or what have you, you do an incremental update, and it pulls over all the things that have changed from the old and puts the new. And like I said, it keeps security and permissions intact better than the other method I've found. It's less likely to break links. And also for scripting the transfer during off hours. And the biggest one, second biggest one, is that it provides a really great debugging feature. As far as if anything failed to move, there's a million and one errors I've seen come through, and it's really helpful to have these tools to be able to trace back to what the underlying cause is. So your action, right? So, let me go back. Call to action, right? Why should you migrate your company to SharePoint 16 or Office 365? Maybe you want reasons to migrate. Obviously, you want to provide your employees the best tools for the job, or behind a broken infrastructure, reduce costs, repurpose personnel. Maybe the new features and faster performance. Each version has gotten better than the last, or possibly, and this is kind of scary for some people. That you're running in an older version of MOS 2007. Microsoft has dropped all support, so no security updates. There's no software patches, and if you try to call them to have them, try to fix it for you. Sometimes, honestly, I've been to the point where thought of has not potentially worked or fixed or mitigated the problem. And so when you got to, bring in Microsoft, obviously the people who wrote it, to come up with it. And so with MOS 2007, you get no telephone support. 2010, it's the same thing. Security updates, no software patches. But they will gladly take your money to help you fix it still. And that's good for at least, I think, the next year or two. So you get telephone support, but no security updates. And those are kind of key because if you want to run your Windows desktop at home without any security or software patches for the next 2 years, I know I wouldn't. So those are some biggies to, as far as reasons to want to move to the next latest and greatest. And this comes to the end of what of my spiel here on reasons to migrate. In the end, dedicating the resources and time to any migration is not to be taken lightly. You are ready to take that next step. I'd hope you let our expertise at Vigilant Technologies, help guide you. This time, I will take any questions or pass it on to Jim.
Thank you much, Sean. That was very informational. We appreciate it. I would ask you, if you have any questions, you can use the chat window, and we'll be glad to address them. If you'd prefer, we can follow up one-on-one with you at another time. A couple of questions showing up in the chat window here, Sean. What's the difference between the major migration tools?
The main differences, the three are ShareGate, Have,